I call the Planning Commission meeting for July 7, 2022 to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jackie, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Haddon?
Here.
Mr. Perkovich?
Here.
Ms. Small?
Here.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Here.
Mr. Varga?
Here.
Mr. Crocker?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on June 16, 2022.
So moved. Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. On tonight's agenda, we have one public hearing, and we will follow this format. First, the applicant will have the opportunity to explain what they would like to do at a particular location. Second, anyone wishing to speak in favor of this proposal will be given the opportunity. Finally, anyone wishing to speak in opposition will also be afforded the time to do so, or some people may just have questions, and we will get those answers. With that in mind, we have a conditional use permit to allow a reduction of the required buffer adjacent to an R2 and R4 single-family residential districts at 6883 Reynolds Road. Is that applicant here?
Yes, sir.
Please come up, give us your name and address, and tell us what you'd like to do.
Mr. Cook and the rest of the commission, thank you very much, first of all, for hearing us. My name is Steve Sindelar. I'm one of the pastors at Grace Church of Mentor, so we reside at 6883 Reynolds Road. First of all, just want to thank you all very much again for what you do for our city, and I do want to just let you know that we, as a congregation, pray and are thankful for what you all do. Secondly, you'll see the required CUP and the buffer that we're requesting a reduction of. Our church property was constructed prior to the current code and the current buffer requirements. Back in 2016 and into 2017, we began looking for more space on our current property. We worked with the neighbors at that time to essentially come to a compromise with the buffer that you see before you. That buffer takes existing parking by about 35 feet currently. That buffer also essentially stops just short of where we currently have stormwater retention installed and underground storage for the parking. So it seemed like a good compromise for our church that had already invested in parking, and a good compromise to improve the buffer for the neighbors to the east of us. So the buffer request is in lieu of an upcoming request to have an addition to our current property, which will allow flexible worship space. So I don't know, is that sufficient, or any other questions there?
No, not for now. Just hang out real soon.
And obviously, I'm also in favor, so I'd like to speak in favor of it.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? And we have a few. These are all.
Yes.
So we have some wishing to speak in opposition. The first one is Jacqueline. Just give us your name and address, or you have it.
My name is Jacqueline Burr. I'm at 7432 Spring Blossom Drive in Mentor. And I'm actually the third person to speak, but I'll let you know what my take is right now.
Okay.
Back in 2017, we were here, and we did get a letter stating, what had been agreed upon at that time. And the piece that I'd like to talk about is just the berm that will be built with the new zoning, the 3-foot berm with the 8-foot vinyl white fence. And the foliage or the arborvitae.
Speak a little more into the mic. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So the piece that I wanted to speak about was the berm and the solid 8-foot vinyl fence and the screening or shrubs, the arborvitaes that were agreed upon back in 2017 when we were here with the church. And just to make it clear, we wanted what was agreed upon for the fence was a solid 8-foot white vinyl privacy fence. And with that, we were thinking like, no lattice or separation, solid. And the other piece that we discussed back in 2017 that we just wanted to bring up again was that the buffer requirements, including the berm, the 8-foot white vinyl fence, and the landscape planting, shall be installed as close as possible to the start of the construction as opposed to at the end. And that was agreed upon. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Carrie Edwards? Just give us your name and address for the clerk and
I'm Carrie Edwards. I reside at 7412 Spring Blossom Drive. And I have a couple of things that I would like to talk about with the new CUP request. Most of it was captured from the 2017 agreement. There were a couple of changes that I'd just like to talk about. But first, I'd like to show that in the CUP, there is, I think, a typo. See that? Okay. I don't know if you want to put it up there, but it says that the fence is 6 feet. It should be 8. All throughout the text, it says 8, and I believe the zoning requirements, when I went to the code zoning ordinances, it said 8 feet. So I just thought that should be corrected for consistency. It's on page 2, and it's in the little chart.
okay. Which is 6 feet.
The landscape plan that was submitted with this CUP indicates evergreens across the eastern part of the eastern portion of the church's property that butts up to myself's and 7422. There's a misunderstanding or a typo. It says that the property owners of 7422 would approve all of those evergreens. I don't think that they meant that behind my property they would be approving those evergreens. I don't want them because this is the view from my yard. Whoops, there you go. It's shallow. It's dense. I have some they have some large trees back there, and it's a really nice view, and that's the wetland area. I can't see cutting down trees to plant evergreen trees. I just think that's not a good plan. So, if that's okay, I'd like that removed from the landscape plan. Also, if you go back to the landscape plan, there was some parking added to, see where the red and the highlighted area is? There was parking added there. We had originally requested a 64-foot extension there because it had been a drive, and the church agreed, that's appropriate. Now they've added parking spaces there, so I'm hoping to trade my trees for more vinyl fencing as a screen there, if appropriate. Because there's a drive and there's parking spaces and there's just going to be headlights coming in, because they already do come in. And then finally, the wetland area, there's nothing in the CUP that talks about what is the size of it, what is the dimension. There's all kinds of description of the fence. It should be returned 64 feet, and it should be this high, and it goes on the east, and so on and so forth. But nothing about the wetland. I'm thinking it would be appropriate to put something in dimensionally that speaks to that area so that it's not ambiguous. And for future reference, I just feel that it would be appropriate to have that in the CUP. And that's all I had.
Thank you. Rick Molnar? Let's give us your name and address, please.
Alrighty. Hi, I'm Rick Molnar, 7422 Spring Blossom Drive, Mentor, Ohio. First, as the others mentioned, I was very pleased to see that this proposal states that it includes all of the conditions listed in the March 3rd, 2017 approval. Therefore, most of my concerns regarding this stuff is like missing clarifications. So the first item I have is the same as last time. Drainage is a huge concern for all the neighbors along the east property line. There is a beehive drain at the south end of the fence, which is great, but at the other end, the north end of the fence, they need to have at least another beehive drain there, because I don't know how many hundreds of feet that is between there, but it's the swale is certainly not going to drain all the way to that one side. In fact, the swale needs to be engineered such to allow standing water along the entire east line to somehow, no longer have standing water along that entire east line. And this is a picture, if you could please put up. And this shows on the neighbor's side of the fence.
We're getting a reflection.
It's hard to see there, but you'll see water is all along almost the entire fence area. So we already have a standing water issue. And
Can you
they
just
do have
pass that? We'll just pass that through.
they do have a swale in the design there, but I did not see the beehive on the one end. I did not see drain tile. I did not see any of that kind of stuff. So I don't know how we're going to get rid of standing water, and we already have an issue. So that was a concern. The second item I have is, I understand, like we talked about, the north fence return has two panels that'll be at the same height, and the berm will linearly transition over that 64 feet west until there's no berm, and that's all good. But what was not clear to me is, not specified in the drawings anywhere, is what happened, what's the berm and swale design on the north side of that north fence return? Is it the same as what they have specified here for the east, or is it something else? Because it's not in the drawing, and you can't just stop a berm instantly. That fence has to be on something, and you can't just, stop the berm immediately. So there must be some kind of grade or whatever on the side towards the wetlands. So that would be a specification I would be very interested in knowing. In the same area, this is item 3. We are actually the homeowners that are going to really need those 8-foot evergreens spaced for screening. The one that they mentioned about 7422 Spring Blossom, deciding where those go. And we're looking to just put those inside that church property line from the fence corner headed north. But my question is, what happens if any of these evergreens die? I mean, is it just that's going to be what it is, or is the church obligated to maintain that screening and so on that we agree upon? And that's everything I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the sheets I have. Is there anybody else wishing to speak against? Okay,
I didn't fill out a sheet, is that all right, though?
Sure, just come up, give us your name and address.
So, my name's Mike Mastrodonato. I live at 7402 Spring Blossom.
Could you spell that last name, please?
Sure. Mastrodonato. And I'm at 7402 Spring Blossom. And I really didn't have a question until he brought it up. As the fence returns going on the north side of the fence, is there any drainage or anything to take the water off of that berm, or is it just going to shed into the wetlands? So if you know where my property is, it's adjacent to those wetlands. My back left yard is those wetlands. I probably put $25,000 into drainage and $25,000 into landscaping in my backyard to solve some drainage and wetness issues. It's just a swamp back there. So mine's the first house on Spring, yeah, the one with the pool. So, and if you see, you know, those wetlands butt right up against my property on two sides, and I can tell you, it is just now dried out from spring. So I have surrounded my property with drainage and catch basins and taking it out to the storm. Is there anything that's going to prevent more water from being dumped into that wetlands? And I'm thinking if you have a fence running along the property heading north and then turning west, that west side of that same berm is just going to shed water right into that same wetland area. Any way that can be solved or resolved, or along with my neighbor that needs another catch basin, I can't tell you the distance of that fence, but it's probably 300 feet, I'm guessing. And you have one catch basin on one end of it, and you're expecting a natural swale to carry all the water along the back of those three sides of those properties all the way to that one catch basin. And if you have a 1 inch per 8 foot pitch, you'd have to have 10 feet of elevation change between the three property lines. So I don't see a swale working. I thought maybe another catch basin with pipe tied between the two catch basins, taking the water out to the retention pond, would be necessary to actually relieve the water problem that we're all having now. So those are some concerns I have. All right, and that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else? You get one more crack at it.
I'm sorry. I just want to add, like, in that picture, you can actually see it too. I'm 7432, the one with the cars in the driveway. And towards the back, you can actually see, like, the dirt and everything running into my backyard. And we do have a lot of drainage right back around our shed. And it kind of starts from that property. You can see it comes right into our backyard. I have a picture of how flooded my backyard gets. But as Rick Molnar had mentioned, you know, having the beehives at the corners are good, but we feel that there needs to be more piping, gravel, and beehives or some type of drainage throughout that whole property line. I mean, I have a lake in my backyard when it rains, and we do have drainage, you know, beehives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going once? This public hearing is closed. Kathy, anything from administration? Could we touch base on a few of these
Sure.
issues?
Well, just a couple of comments. With regard to the initial comment, the staff acknowledges there's a typo in the buffer chart, but the rest of the information and the information on the plan confirms that the height of the fence should be 8 feet. So for the record, the height of the fence should be 8 feet. With regard to some of the comments or the notations that are made on the buffered landscape plan, I guess I would agree that that first notation at the top that says existing forested wetlands location to be approved by property owner located at 7422 Spring Blossom Drive. I don't know that that's appropriate wording. I don't think that the property owner should determine the location of the wetlands. I think that really what needs to be said is that any wetlands are going to be maintained. The whole point of this northeast corner is to maintain the wooded area as much as possible. There's no intention by the staff to have good, healthy trees removed. So I think there should be a notation made that any final approval shall be in coordination and with our landscape architect, who should have final review of the location of any new trees. And if it's in concert and with discussion with some of the property owners, that's fine, but I think that that first notation should be reworded. I don't know how the Planning Commission feels about moving some of those evergreens. Obviously, the 2017 list of conditions were extremely specific. And the applicant has responded to those, and it looks like now that there's some suggestions, but I guess for further discussion. As far as the fence return at 64 feet, I don't know that it's absolutely necessary to extend the fence further west when that existing buffer is already in place. I obviously see the purpose of the fence and the benefit of the fence at the return to shield any kind of headlights and so forth. I think there was another question with regard to how is that return going to work with regard to the berm. The way the condition was written, the berm and the fencing would have a graduated kind of decline in the height, with the ultimate height on that 64-foot return being 8 feet. But that it does mention a graduated height. So if there, I don't know if there needs to be any further clarification in the wording, but obviously with the berm being at 3 feet, and then the return there probably needs to be some sort of graduated return with the berm. But those are the only additional comments we have. I think that, in fact, the buffer that is proposed is in concert with the approved conditions from 2017.
And what about if an evergreen dies?
Well, as we've noted in the conditions, that the buffer, the property owner is responsible for maintaining the buffer for the life of the property, the building, and project. So if there is any kind of unhealthy trees that need to be removed, then they would be replaced.
And how would the local residents go about enacting that?
Well, certainly they could contact the planning department and let us know, and we could then go out and do an inspection. We have an arborist on our staff, as well as the landscape architect, who then could make some determinations of what needs to be removed or what should stay.
Okay. Thank you. Could we get the applicant back up? Thanks. Is there anything from the commission members? Have any questions?
I have a question, I think, first.
Mr. Varga.
For the planning commission, for the planning department. The subject about these buffer, what are they? What kind of plan is it? The fir trees that are going to be planted,
Evergreens?
evergreens. They're shown on the drawing as a regular, one after another. Can that be built with the existing tree pattern?
There is no existing tree pattern at the buffer there.
Well, we saw a picture that showed it completely.
On our side of the property, those trees are on the other side. Those are all. Are you speaking of where the fence is going, or are you?
No, not where the fence is going.
My apologies.
We're between the wetlands and the properties to the east. All I was getting at is that, we saw a picture that showed that it was all woodlands. I wouldn't want, in order to create that line of evergreens, to tear down existing trees that are good trees. So how are we going to deal with that? Are we going to get a tree survey? Are we going to plant some and not others? How are we going to deal with that situation? How would you like to deal with that situation?
Well, there's a couple of things here. It says very specifically, 10 to 15 8-foot-high evergreen trees to be planted and approved by the property owner. Again, I think that
Approved
maybe
by the residential property?
yeah.
Correct.
Okay, I just.
And again, I think that should be modified to indicate, if, in talking about no healthy trees are going to be removed, number one,
Right.
and that any review of that area and the number of trees maybe shall be finalized and approved by the landscape architect of the city.
And the homeowner.
And the homeowner, but
Right.
yeah, I don't think it should be the sole, I don't think the wording here is appropriate. I think it needs to be revised.
Yep. My issue or my concern is that we don't cut down good trees to
Sure.
put up a line of evergreens. Maybe we put some evergreens in, we leave the good trees. But this is a wetland, right? And I'm sure technically the wetland doesn't stop at the property line. It's probably that whole corner of everyone's property is still a wetland, so. I don't know that what the applicant would be doing is going to change the wetland condition on their property. as long as water's not dumping onto their property, I think the plan would be good, right?
Well, and mind you too, this is only for the reduction of the buffer at this time. Any drainage issues
Okay.
are going to be reviewed at the time of final site,
Yeah,
or the
let's
site
not
plan
get it more
review.
complicated.
Because you're pulling back the asphalt.
Yeah, we're pulling back, and I mean, if anything, our presence with the asphalt and
Lessen.
it's lessening the effect there. The berm will probably have no effect other than just moving it, wherever gravity's going to take it. So
But it's clear that this much asphalt next to Spring Blossom, I mean, we saw the pictures, so when, you're gonna redo the asphalt, right? I mean, you're gonna redo something back there.
yeah, the asphalt's being removed in the buffer area. My point is
Right.
My,
And so I guess my take is, I mean, we're getting a little thick in the woods here, but
Yeah.
at that point, when you do the drainage, maybe you could run that last bit of the asphalt uphill towards the back half. So all the drainage comes back towards you and you create catch basins along that way. So it doesn't even shed that way at all.
Sure, yeah, I don't think it, I mean, Rich can correct me, but I don't think it's even shedding that way now. But we'll design it that way. It's shedding into the existing catch basins. My point is,
Some of it is. Some,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, anything on the, I mean, right, I mean, yeah.
I think when you re-engineer this back half with drainage and with asphalt, you're gonna be able to correct that problem.
Sure, yes, sir. Yeah, I would think so. Just, again, I think that the existing asphalt is actually helping conditions prior to when there was no existing asphalt and existing catch basins there. It was just sitting there,
Right,
in the
right.
original condition of the topography, so. But, yeah, we would seek to help remedy that situation, absolutely.
And you would be, and then you're gonna come back with a site plan.
Correct.
When you decide to build the structure, and at that point, we'll review the drainage and make it better for everybody.
Right. That's fair. Thank you.
Is there anything else from the commission members? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
With
your
that, I'll
time.
entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the 7 proposed conditions.
The seventh condition.
seventh? 6. 6 conditions.
Second.
Kathy?
You want to make a condition that modifies the notation on the plan.
Yes, so someone can,
You were right.
I can't see it. To, the seventh condition being to eliminate the 7422 Spring Blossom Drive, approved by property owner located at 7422. How should we word it?
One suggestion would be where it says 10 to 15 8-foot high evergreen trees location, maybe just say evergreen trees shall be filled along the property line as necessary and as approved by the city in concert with the agreement of the
adjacent property.
adjacent property owners. It gives us the ability to then decide, well, it has to be 10 to 15, maybe it's not 10 to 15, maybe it's a little less, it's a little more, depending on what's already out there. So you just indicate evergreen trees shall be planted at 8 feet where appropriate along the buffer to maintain the buffer, as approved by the city's landscape architect, as well as agreed upon by the adjacent property owners. In reference the buffer and landscape plan, which is C1.01, I'm sorry, C1.01. I'm gonna,
Have that as
I don't know.
we have.
Yeah, I have one.
I mean, are you all comfortable with that?
Yes.
And then remove the specific address, and then,
Property owners.
yes.
So let's say it one time for the record. Let's say it.
Well, I can't say it.
Kathy, one more time.
Well, why don't she read back?
Yeah,
what
see what
I
she's
have
got?
evergreen trees shall be filled in along property line as necessary and as approved by the city and agreed upon by adjacent property owners.
Eastern property line.
Eastern property owners.
Yeah, so that's actually a notation shall be added on sheet C 1.01 that says.
We'll add that note to that.
That's the seventh condition.
Clear as mud.
Yes, and that's the seventh condition. Did we have a second?
Second? Yeah, I think we did have a second, actually.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Your second.
Mr. Haddon?
There's a
Yes.
third.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have an architectural review of a storage facility, Life Storage, at 8679 through 8693 at East Avenue. I'll entertain a motion to remove this from the table.
So moved?
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Please give us your name and address.
Hello, my name is Dan Schwans. I'm with Life Storage, 6467 Main Street, Buffalo, New York.
All right, just tell us a little bit about your architecture.
Sure. So I do apologize. I was not at the initial presentation of this project. My civil engineer was, Polaris Engineering. But we did go back and watch the video of that initial meeting and gathered that there's a few things that were of concern to the planning board. One, that the colors didn't, I guess, project well the ephes section of the vestibule area, as well as the wainscoting block and how high that was carried up the building. So we went back, my architect and I went through, and we tried to figure out how we could address the concerns. We gathered from the sentiment of that meeting that the overall aesthetics of the building were okay, and that we made some modifications to that. We presented, or we included two different facades for you to look at. One is basically the same thing that was presented, just changing the color of the ephes is what you see there. The second one is carrying the wainscoting up further on the building, basically to the top of a door height, 80-some inches. And I would say at this point, we went back and forth on this quite a bit, but I do believe that the lower wainscoting presents better, if you will. It's a sharper look. You don't have the changes in elevation of the wainscoting around the building. We still did not include wainscoting along the interior side of the building, the bottom elevation that you see there, only because that's where the compressor units are, that they act as a natural barrier to people hitting the building. And that's kind of why we started putting the wainscoting along the bottom of the building. So we gave you two options to look at, to discuss, or ask questions, whatever your desire is. You know, my feeling is that the lower wainscoting elevation presents better. We're not trying to shy away from adding masonry to it. We're just trying to find the right fit, a building that maintains our internal aesthetics, design guides, but also fits in well with that property along the other properties along that street, and gives our customers something new and attractive. That's it.
Thank you. Kathy, anything from administration?
We've noted two conditions. We made a recommendation on that we were, pleased with option 2, but certainly defer to the planning commission on this.
Thank you. Anything from the commission members? Mr. Varga?
No.
I like the second option. anytime we can get more.
Maintaining with the masonry ratio that fits in with that
Yeah,
ordinance.
I like option 2. But I don't speak for everybody, but I think do you have a problem with either one?
I don't. We presented it as an option. I'm just stating that, with the overall look of it from an aesthetic point of view, we feel that the lower wainscoting elevation is a sharper, gives cleaner lines to the building overall. You don't have that change in elevation, high to low around the front.
Kathy, could you give us your explanation on why we like 2 over 1, or?
I think just to be consistent with how the commission has approved other buildings and also with the design guidelines, which always requests more brick whenever possible. But they are guidelines, so.
Okay. Well, I like option 2, and I don't know if anybody.
I concur. I think option 2 is probably the way to go. I think more brick is always better, and something we've always stood by in the past.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with the 2 conditions.
Second.
And the recommendation of option 2.
That's number 2.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have a second?
Yeah, there was.
Done.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
There was one thing, though.
Yes.
I asked for more scarlet and gray and less yellow and blue. But
I'll see what I
can't
can
get
do.
it all. You are from Buffalo.
Thank you.
We have a miscellaneous review to transfer a conditional use permit at 7328 Industrial Park Boulevard. Do I have a motion to remove that from the table?
So moved. Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Will the applicant please come up, give us your name and address, and tell us a little bit about the transfer?
Hello, my name is Denise Marsh, and I live at 2349 Arley Drive, Cleveland Heights, Ohio. And we actually operate another business, my family in Mentor, at 7322 Industrial Park Boulevard, Healthy Solutions MD. And Studio Bliss became available during the pandemic, and we basically decided to rent out the space as is because the prior owners left the space due to some family circumstances. So we're basically doing exactly what they did, which is it's basically a hair salon / we have some aesthetics going on there, but otherwise it's pretty much the same thing that they were doing.
Thank you. Kathy, anything from administration?
I've asked Larry to pull up the staff report, and just to confirm, we did have some conditions before. We have no issues with the transfer, but just for the record, to be consistent, because it was at the last meeting. Bear with us for just a second.
Just so that you know, we don't have any documentation.
I know, that's why I'm pulling it up.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a condition made on the original salon. I don't know if there was any concerns with that condition by the applicant, as far as number 1.
No.
So you're okay with the two
I'm fine.
conditions? Okay.
I'm reading the second one. That's fine.
So that's, for the record, that is the June 16th staff report. There's 2 conditions.
Anything from the commission members? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve with the 2 conditions.
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Thank you.
Under new business, we have an architectural reimage of a motorcycle sales service facility at 8567 Tyler Boulevard. An applicant here, please give us your name and address and tell us a little bit about the reimage.
My name is Richard Nyden. I'm with Ray Fogg Building Methods, the contractor, and we business resides at 981 Keynote Circle, Cleveland, Ohio.
Thank you. Give us a little bit of what you want to do.
Yes, the project is to create a new entrance and a new image for the Honda dealership at Western Reserve Harley-Davidson and Honda, and it deals with the back building, which is the Honda facility, and it modifies the existing front entrance with new AMC panels that Honda specifies to get to be a powerhouse dealership. By the front door, there's an addition of, I believe it's 328 square feet, which is basically kind of a vestibule area for the new entrance. But the existing building remains the same. It'll get repainted on the southwest and north sides of the Honda building. Basically, like the elevation shown.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's.
Kathy, anything from the administration?
No, other than the 4 conditions noted. The applicant did provide an updated site plan today with some additional pavement markings to provide better direction and traffic flow, indicate handicap spaces, and do not enter in that area by the new entry, which we are certainly in agreement with.
All right, thank you. Anything from the commission members? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with the 4 conditions.
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have an architectural reimage of a storage facility at 7840 through 7870 Tyler Boulevard. Is that applicant here? Please come up, give us your name and address. Tell us a little bit about the reimage.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Haynes. My address is 5645 Castle Creek Parkway North Drive, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46250. And I represent Rise Commercial District. This is our mentor site. And what we're talking about tonight are basically these buildings here in the front on the north part facing Tyler Boulevard. We applied last September and October, but this last winter, a number of our sites, we redesigned the front-facing buildings to be cleaner, more modern and attractive. Our communities have really appreciated the kind of upscale, modern look, so when it faces the street, it looks very nice. This new look's going to be more expensive, but we believe it will provide a more attractive front to the community. And it's our understanding that these communities want to get away from that V shape as opposed to this, which is why we've done so. So the new elevations reflect this, which is why we have changed our appearing for this tonight.
Thank you. Kathy, anything from the administration?
We have 2 conditions noted, the second being that the administration prefers the original design approved in May of 2021.
Thank you. Anything from the fellow commission members?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Crocker?
I would be inclined to agree with the administration. While I appreciate the effort to try to make it more attractive, I find the original design much more appealing than, I guess it would be a country western motif that probably does not fit into this community as well as maybe some other communities.
Is that all? Yes. Thank you. Mr. Varga?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I kind of find the going in this direction a little strange for our environment here. Is there anything going on the roof behind these walls, these false walls?
No, it's a front.
No, I
So
understand.
again,
It's a
shape the
it's
front
like, it's
shape.
like a false front. Yeah.
Right.
Do you know how much snow collect behind this? Just as an aside.
Well, I mean, it goes down the back, so that's just a front face,
Oh,
right?
I
So-
understand, but you'll have 6 feet of snow up there. But I'm just telling you.
Sure.
Yeah, it looks to me like there's something else wants to be there now. Is like a big sign or some kind of graphic, or it actually creates it. It looks a little plain, and I agree with the previous comment that I would like to see the original scheme. It looks kind of geometrically arbitrary, whereas the other one was understandable as it reflected the shape of the roof.
Thank you. Is there anything else? I'm on board with the other two. It looks a little frontier for me, and I like what we approved the first time around, and I'm on page with administration and my two colleagues to the right here. So, is that all? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve with 2 conditions?
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
No.
Ms. Small?
I'm sorry, can I have clarification?
Hmm?
Are we approving the initial or are we approving the current?
That's what he wants to approve.
Okay, but the condition 2 is regarding the previous. That's my, I guess that's a question for Kathy. When we, or the,
And maybe we need to word that differently, but I think that's how we put it, is that the approval would be that it's consistent with the previous approval.
Okay.
Mr. Zeman?
I think perhaps the cleaner way to do it is the application was for an amendment to what has already been approved. So I think what the commission's getting at is whether or not it's going to approve that revision or not. So by denying the application, that maintains the status quo. If that makes sense.
So we're okay with the conditions as is?
Well, they become inoperative because the application would be denied.
Okay. Ms. Small, are you okay with it? You understand?
yeah, I understand.
Okay, all right.
So if I vote yes or no, it doesn't matter, it's just,
No.
it's gonna be either way.
If you vote yes, you get this. If you vote no, you get
the original.
The original.
I thought if I voted yes, which includes the,
No, he just clarified.
Okay,
It
sorry.
would be cleaner. It would be cleaner. And so that's, yeah, ours was a little misleading, and so
my apologies
no,
then.
yeah.
No is my vote.
Okay.
Mr. Tiedemann?
No.
Mr. Varga?
No.
Mr. Crocker?
No.
Mr. Cook?
No. Thank you.
Thank you.
But we still appreciate Rise and Menor.
Thank you.
Number 6. We have a final subdivision to create 30 residential lots at Dove Lane and Mallard Court. Is that applicant here? I see he is. Please come up, give us your name and address, and tell us a little bit about the final subdivision.
Good evening, my name is David Novak. My address is 9114 Tyler Boulevard, Mentor, Ohio. And I also have Todd Victor, president of Glenbrook Estates, Inc. And his address is 20 Alberta Road in Painesville. This project is circled around in Menor here for a little bit. But again, it's an RVG project on about 14.5 acres. The surrounding properties are pretty much RVG, and with the freeway to the south. We've reviewed all of the engineering comments, and we'll work with the administration to work through those comments. The one thing that some of you may be aware that there was this project was denied, and then there was actually a lawsuit, and there was an agreement that was entered in, and the agreement talks about some of the amenities and so forth. And so we've had a conversation with the administration, and the plan that you see before you, we've modified the location of the walking path that goes around the pond. But the original concept that we had, and it doesn't really reflect in the agreement, what that material or what that walking path should be made out of. And we're proposing, if we can get this layout approved, that it would be an asphalt, 4-foot wide asphalt walking path versus the gravel that we had initially envisioned for this project. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer those questions.
Thank you. Kathy, anything from the administration?
I'd ask if our law director could provide some clarification on the process. I think there's some members here in the audience, and just for everyone's benefit who's listening, on how this has unfolded and the charge before the Planning Commission.
Sure. Mr. Zeman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, for some of our new members as well. Initially, the RVG proposal was denied. Ultimately, through negotiation process, Council did approve the rezoning pursuant to this development plan that you see in front of you. One of the material aspects of that is the unit density, which was substantially reduced from that which the Planning Commission had initially seen, and also some revisions as well. So it was rezoned pursuant to development plan, as RVGs are, and so why is it in front of the Planning Commission? Well, because the process between a preliminary and a final involves various technical analyses and things that have to you have to go through. And so that's what's before you tonight, is to make sure that this final is in substantial agreement, as the code requires, with the preliminary approved plan. And some of the things were left to be decided because, frankly, once you get into technical drawings, and these are just things that have to, as you're aware, get fleshed out. One of which were any type of recreational amenity and where they would be appropriately located. Obviously, in the past few years, some things such as pavilions have met with opposition from the homeowners. Walking paths, I think members of the commission have expressed, shouldn't go, behind people's rear yards, given the intrusion. And so some of those aspects then, pursuant to the settlement agreement, were left for the Planning Commission, administration, and the project developer to work through. Also, any landscaped entryways, features, things of that nature. So, aside from that, I just want to assure everyone that we do have language in the settlement agreement, which the open space, there's block A, B, and C, that is to remain undisturbed. Only incidental disturbances, necessary as part of the construction may occur. So, I want to assure everyone that that language does appear in the settlement agreement. Again, there's staking that may be required and other things of that nature. So, there's always some little incidental impacts. And so one of the reasons is, why not discuss the material for the walking path? Well, if walking paths were to go through the open space, then there's a question as to the the manner of construction, how much disturbance would be appropriate. So, again, those are matters that were left to be fleshed out. Aside from that, again, there's nothing really necessarily specific in the settlement agreement relative to the exact nature of any recreational amenities. So I would just encourage the Planning Commission to look at recent approvals. Mentor Highlands, some of the other RVGs are of this size and that nature, where typically the amenity has been a walking path around some common area. So aside from that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So just to put into layman's terms, we're not really voting on if we like the plan. It's only if it's in compliance with what was negotiated through council and the law department.
Well, again, just to back up a little bit on the process, when the Planning Commission makes a recommendation on a rezoning, it goes up to council. At that juncture, council is free to amend, modify, accept, or reject the Planning Commission recommendation. That final decision, in all respects, is up to council. And so, again, there was some discussions, and again, we absolutely took into account some of the concerns of the residents relative to unit density, preserving some of the open spaces and sort of matching them a bit with some of the open spaces that they enjoy in their development, and making sure that, you know, those types of impacts, and particularly tree preservation along those open spaces in Block A, B, and C were preserved. All that said, you know, we had to take into account the fact that there are some wetlands in there, and not disturbing those was a priority as well. So aside from that, hopefully that answers the question.
It does, and you actually lead into the question I had regarding the wetlands, that on the plan it calls the wetland to be called, you refer to it as conservation area, to be renamed as wetland. Really, parcel 1, 2, and 3 is a wetland. And it says the plat shall have language that says wetlands shall not be disturbed. So paint me the picture. I'm house number 2. I can't mow my backyard. I can't disturb it, or you can't touch it.
That's correct. Within that shaded area.
Within that shaded, and the house, I mean, could be 5 feet off the back of that. So how do you make sure that never happens? That's good in theory.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can, sorry, Mr. Novak.
Mr. Zeman.
That area will actually not be owned by the homeowners. That is going to be owned by the association. These are property unit blocks. So you basically own an area approximate to the outer dimensions of your structure, and the deck and patio as well. Now, what you then have outside of that is an exclusive use area, so that you don't have people just, you know, hanging out outside your back door. But that area will actually be owned by the association, so the association will have direct management and control over it, subject to any rights of that particular homeowner to sort of enjoy the typical backyard amenities, if you will.
Thank you. Is there any, Kathy, I saw, yeah. Ms.
Yeah, I'm
Mitchell.
sorry. And I guess to add to that, so you can see here, Larry pulled up, you can see the area that's the buildable area for the actual dwelling, and then the exclusive use area, which, as Mr. Zeman pointed out, is ultimately owned in common. The declarations that they still have to provide, the developer has to provide to the city, will have to be reviewed and approved by us, which will outline how these areas are maintained and or protected. So that will be sifted out through the declarations. I guess I just wanted to point out 2 things. We had made a recommendation to table it prior to receiving this additional information from the developer. We've been working with Mr. Novak and Mr. Victor over the last few days in discussing the need for the landscape plan to be provided and these amenities to be called out as specified in the settlement agreement. It was imperative that you had this information before it moved up to council. And now that we do, and they've proposed the walking trail, which was an amenity that you had seen earlier, that the administration would be in favor of the walking trail that they've proposed, and would note the asphalt is certainly the preferred material, as we've seen time and time again now with these newer developments. The gravel is not desired. So we would be in support of that. We did make a note in the staff report, and it wasn't a condition, but I wanted to bring it up because I know some of the residents in the adjoining development along Mallard have some concerns with their buffer that you see there on the west side of the development. And at the end of Kingfisher Court, we thought it might be helpful to provide some type of fencing right along that property line, so to help with some headlight mitigation, that if there could be some fencing installed. Now, again, we didn't make that a condition, but if the commission was in favor of that, that would be something that might be of interest to them and help to protect that area. And I think maybe if I could ask Mr. Novak to just comment on, in terms of construction process, they want to ensure that that buffer is not going to be impacted or harmed in any way during the construction of the development and the homes in particular. If you could just confirm what you do to protect that property line?
Well, along that property line, we could surely install that orange fencing, that construction fencing along the property line, so that during the construction, the removal of the trees and the construction of the improvements, that there's a visible barrier there to protect that adjacent property. But again, that's not our property, so we need to stay on our property.
That would be helpful. I mean, that would be a good condition
Thank
to
you.
add.
That condition, and what about permanent fencing along there as well?
If you were in agreement with that.
I am in agreement with that. I can see people turning around in that cul-de-sac.
We'd surely be willing to try. The problem is that we have that's the outlet from the pond that goes to the creek at the southern portion of the picture on the screen right there. So we have a storm sewer running through there. We've lowered the grade on our property to accept that water, because some of that water from the adjacent property is flowing to the east onto our property. So we've created a little ditch through there to pick that water up. And I'm not sure that there's enough room to put a fence in there, but we'll surely work through it with the administration. But I don't know that a fence is going to work in that area, just because of the constraints that are there.
What about landscaping?
I'd probably prefer to fence than landscaping, because again, if I'm putting bushes and stuff, it's going to impede more onto that ditch, swale, whatever we have going through there, the pipe. I mean, I'm surely willing to try. Again, we wouldn't want the fence to impede any water, because it is flowing. It's very flat, but there is water from the adjacent property to the west flowing onto our property, and so we're accepting that water, we're dealing with that water, we're taking it into our drainage system and outletting it into the stream to the south. So there's just a lot going on there. That's my concern.
All right, thank you. Kathy, I am in total agreement. We've got to do something there on that cul-de-sac, because as those headlights spin around there, it's going to catch that southeast corner of Mallard Court.
I mean, we may be able to put some actually just outside of the right-of-way, but not on the property line. Yes, right in that area, right there, just outside of the right-of-way.
So install fencing right there.
Again, I would be concerned about fencing, with snow plowing and everything else. I'm not sure that you'd want a fence that close to the pavement, but again, if we put some type of bushes that can handle the salt and so forth.
Well, certainly we've done that with other developments. We've put landscaping in lieu of fencing, and that could go around that cul-de-sac. And we could, work with them on an appropriate.
Sort of we don't need an 8-foot fence, some sort of architectural fence that's higher than headlights, with some landscaping and something.
Mr. Chairman, I think that while we need to think about fencing for the headlights, I think that we might be able to accomplish it with solid landscaping if it was chosen right, so it's high enough. And I think that might be a better choice. So maybe the wording, if we are going to add some sort of a condition, might be one or the other or both, but it would be up to city administration, because I think that having the landscape architect look at it and essentially pick out some things that might work well in that little constrained area, that might be the way to go.
What do you think about that?
I think that's workable.
Anything from the commission members?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the law director. When it comes to wetlands and adding impermeable surfaces, do we have jurisdiction? Is that Army Corps of Engineers?
Ultimately, any disturbances would have to be approved by either OEPA or Army Corps. I don't know who's got jurisdiction over this, and I doubt anyone else does either. So, is this OEPA or Army?
I think it ultimately would be the Army Corps.
Okay, well,
I guess that.
The rules change every day.
the rules
so
have changed, so I bet they couldn't figure it out at this point. I think it's proposed to be outside of any wetlands impact. Is I think
Talking
what
about
they're
the
trying to do.
walking paths
Correct. That's what I
specifically, okay.
meant. Yeah, I thought you were just
So
outside
I
of your
don't
delineation.
see-
Again, we're not touching any of the wetlands that are shown on this on this property. We're not going to touch. Again, I believe within the documents that the improvement drawings, and if we didn't, we can surely put it there. We would put again that same type of construction, that orange construction fencing around those areas to protect them during construction. Because again, we don't want to go in them because then somebody's going to call the Army Corps and then we have all sorts of problems that we don't want to have. So we need to protect those and we will.
I guess my follow-up concern there is, I guess if you would have seen me 2 years ago, I was on your side arguing against paths behind my home. I really don't like them. They're not safe. They're really not that great for the homeowners. People don't typically use them. So I don't know if there's a different type of RVG requires a recreational component. I don't know if there's a different type of recreational component you can add that's not a walking path behind homeowners' homes. Yes, that's all I have.
Again, if the commission has some recommendation, again, if that's something that you want to leave up to the administration or whatever, we'd be more than willing to entertain some other type of recreational amenity here, but I'm not quite sure what that would be.
Thank you.
I'm done, thank you.
Is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Vargo.
Something's come up in this meeting that I've never seen before, so I just for public discussion or clarification, there's a number of lots, you were discussing some of them, 1, 2, and 3, also 30 and 29, where there's wetlands on the exclusive use area. And so the exclusive use area is an area where only the homeowner gets to do something. The general neighborhood person doesn't get to do something.
Yes and no.
But, yes, that's what I'm getting at. But then, because the wetland is within the exclusive use area, the homeowner's not allowed to do anything there either, right?
Correct.
So there's areas that are overlapped, so to speak, in terms of who has use of these areas.
Correct.
And there's literally areas that no one has use of. But some of them are as close as, I can't read the numbers, they're really small, but like within 10 feet of where a house could be built. You can't go beyond that line to do anything.
Correct.
And neither can anyone else. So anything that exists there that becomes obnoxious, naturally, it becomes an issue, but no one can do anything about it, right?
I wouldn't necessarily say no one can do anything. Again, we need to work through with the administration, but within these wetlands, again, you can't excavate them, you can't fill them. If a tree dies, you could surely go in and remove that dead tree.
By hand, but not with equipment. You can't drive equipment back.
Correct. But the reason that we have an overlap of these exclusive use areas and those wetlands, while again, technically I would agree that no one can do anything in those areas, but let's say it's been a dry summer and you could physically walk through the wetland. So it would restrict somebody from, let's say homeowner number 4 walking through that restricted area that is a wetland behind units number 1, 2, and 3.
To go west Or no, I guess that's...
Yes, to go west.
The west, no, that's right,
Yes.
yeah.
So,
So you
again,
couldn't even walk through there?
well, unit number 2 could walk through the wetland that's on his property, as long as he doesn't disturb it or affect it.
Who's going to monitor this?
Well, again, it's going to be there's wetlands on a lot of projects that are done in the city of Mentor, and again, there will be deed restrictions to control those, and if an adjacent owner or some other property owner sees something going on in that wetland area, then I would assume the city of Mentor would get called, or the Army Corps would get called, and
All right, well,
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, maybe just to clarify, you can't, these aren't typical, sublots. So, if I've got my half-acre lot here in Mentor, I may want to put my shed towards the, rear property line and all of those things. But this is not what this product is. So nothing can get built in any of those areas. So it's not a situation where, in the absence of the wetlands, a shed could be constructed. It can't. It's not a situation where, in the absence of the wetlands, waste could be deposited back there, or anything of that nature could happen. So what are they giving up? Yes, you're not going to have a little impromptu kickball game in the backyard, probably, because it will be wet throughout the vast majority of the year. It's going to stay a naturalized area, and any homeowner that's what they're interested in. And if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell ultimately. But the product that's getting constructed here is, typically for an older population, the approved elevations or first floor master suites, things of that nature. So again, it's a specific home buyer that wouldn't care, perhaps, that they're not really going to be able to utilize their exclusive use area for some recreational activities that they would be able to do in the absence of the wetland.
And just because this is the public discussion of these topics, are you allowed to landscape that area?
no.
Well, the declarations haven't been addressed yet. So part of what could happen potentially in an exclusive use area is if you want to have a vegetable garden, they may allow for that. That wouldn't necessarily...
Except where there's a wetland. You couldn't
again, those wetlands are going to be there no matter what. So
I understand.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to, that
Correct,
you almost
so,
would have to, if I was a homeowner, I'd almost have to put a line or a fence or something to know that I can't put a rose bush on that side of the line because it's in the wetland.
Again, I think those are issues that the potential buyer would be made aware of, and they either are interested in the property or not. It's going to be preserved. Obviously, it's wetlands. There's not going to be any soil disturbing activities or anything else of that nature. Wetlands do change over time, of course. Sometimes they dry out. Sometimes they expand. Sometimes they're certain types of the year during, as Mr. Novak indicated, you wouldn't know they're wetlands. They're perfectly dry. So again, it's a situation where the potential buyer, knowing that their exclusive use area may not be as usable as other potential areas within this subdivision that they may want to acquire instead. So it's just a question of the buyer being informed and knowing what they want in terms of how they're going to use it. It may be that those declarations would prohibit any gardening. Again, that's not something that the city would, on its review, have any say in. That's nothing that the code would require, for example, or prohibit for that matter. So very frequently when we see these declarations, they're pretty tight. There's little to nothing that you're going to do in the exclusive use area. Except perhaps just maintain some simple landscaping around the foundation of the house. That's not unusual whatsoever. Prohibiting any type of above ground pool, prohibiting any type of hot tubs, spas, you name it. I mean, we really see some declarations that are extremely restrictive because that's frankly what they're that's the buyers that they're marketing to. To keep the neighborhood as quiet as possible by limiting outdoor activities to the greatest extent possible. That's an internal governance matter that the city doesn't regulate. Their declarations will govern those types of day-to-day housekeeping matters.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have just to understand this plan better. AVG was created, or RVG was created, I'm sorry, to create larger density, but then to create open space for the benefit of the community, and it was a balancing act, some benefit for tighter density. You've got three major open spaces. Open space A, which is on the north end, kind of wraps around those houses up there. You've got B, which is the southern triangle on the south side of the creek. And you have C, which is where the retention or detention pond is. Could you say a little something about how those would promote the lifestyle or the benefit to the density of the houses that have been provided? I mean, how does that meet the spirit of the code?
Well, I think, again, taking this community and, to the north side and to the west side for sure, we're creating a buffer to those people to keep this community, I don't want to use the word separated, but to incorporate that green space around this development, more so to not impact our adjacent neighbors. But again, even if there aren't any walking paths and so forth designated on this property, that doesn't preclude somebody from walking through some of these open spaces on a given day. So again, I think that because like open space A, most of that is going to remain as is today. It's wooded property, so people could walk through there on a nature walk or whatever you might say, through some of those areas. And the property to the open space B, again, one of the comments or stipulations, I believe, was that they really don't want, the administration doesn't want that area disturbed or used for anything at this point in time.
It's not a wetland.
It is not a wetland.
Okay.
But again, there is a creek, how would you get across that creek to the point of the triangle?
I think previously we asked for a bridge. All right, well, I understand. Postal boxes, where do those go?
On the modified plan, they're right up by that elbow there, I'm sorry. Right in there. We're providing a box with 2 parking spaces there.
Yeah, that's not really on the plan, is it?
It's there. He'll blow it up. The box, you can see that's to the south of the 2 spaces,
Where are the parking spaces?
right there. One.
Oh, so
Those
that's
are 2
pavement.
spaces.
Oh, I
yeah.
see, that pavement comes off, but it's not dedicated right away, or it's just pavement coming off the road.
Correct.
Right, it's just a couple.
I understand, and it goes up against the fence line.
In speaking with Mr. Novak, I think the compromise there with the mailbox being there is it's kind of midway for all of the residents. If you put it further south in the development, then, those in
you have to
units
back
1 and 2,
and
then they've got to go all the way around. So it's kind of a happy medium.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all.
And the fire department wants one name?
So there was some confusion on the improvement plans versus what was on the plat. Kingfisher, there was another name on the improvement plans. It was an incorrect, and it's actually going to be Kingfisher, which is why we've made that a recommended condition under item number 11. The approved names are Dove Lane and Kingfisher Court. There's the reference on the improvement plans is Gemini Place, which is not the correct street name reference.
So it's Dove Lane
Yes,
to the bubble,
Yes.
and then from there it starts as Kingfisher Court.
yes,
And fire department's okay with that?
yes, that was the reference to that point. And Mr. Chairman, if I may add one thing, we had made a recommendation in the analysis section of the report on page 3. If you look at the second paragraph, we spoke of the exclusive use area. I neglected to put that in as a condition, and I would recommend that the very specific sentence that says, language shall be included on the plat describing the use of these areas and the allowable amount of encroachment shall be noted. And we've even provided example language. So we want the exclusive use areas defined on the dedication page of the plat, and that we would recommend that that be a condition.
Oh, you have it in the,
So, yeah, that exact same sentence, but when it says use of these areas, I would just say use of the exclusive use areas. And when we say the allowable amount of encroachment, this has come up with some of the more recent developments. Okay, so you can put a deck in there. Well, how far can that deck go to the end of that exclusive use area? Do we want some sort of a setback? We've seen it in a couple of the developments, and I think it would be a good idea. So that's when we say the amount of encroachment, that's what we're referring to.
If I may.
Mr.
The
Zeman.
exclusive use areas were, nothing was to be built in there. Everything goes in the property unit blocks, so the property unit blocks, this is section 3.2 of the agreement. The property unit blocks are the land areas numbered on exhibits, sublots number 1, to be transferred in fee simple to the unit owners, and upon which structures other than common infrastructure may exclusively be constructed. This includes at-grade patios, decks, and other such accessory structures and improvements. So nothing goes outside of, nothing of an improvement that's not, sort of common infrastructure goes outside of the property unit blocks. So that's clear.
That's not the use group, that's the white box, not.
Correct. Yeah, just perhaps if Mr. Ressler can pull up the plan. When you see those blocks, yeah, you'll see 1, 2, 3, and then the square footage. That's it. That is anything and everything gets constructed there, exclusive of the streets, of course. Everything outside of there is going to be green or wet, as the case might be. Just so it's clear. So we're talking about preservation of open space. I think so these exclusive use areas, well, absolutely, they could be maintained as lawn. Nonetheless, those are going to be green areas as well.
So we could still define them, but it wouldn't include because we've used this in other developments, but in the example language we provided in that paragraph, areas owned in common by the associated but the unit owner has the full right to exclusive use, period.
Yes. Really, that's I think that's very handy to have on the plat, but at the end of the day, the association declarations are really going to better define that. So that aspect of our review and making sure that the declarations are in accordance with the settlement agreement is really going to be sort of the real key component of our legal review of this. To Ms. Mitchell's point, absolutely, having that on the plat as a point of clarification, I think is absolutely, best practices for us as well.
thank you. Is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Crocker.
So I guess I want a little more clarification. So this was originally rejected by this board, right? And then it was negotiated and then brought back before this board, right?
No.
No?
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
I'll back up a little
Sure.
bit. So the rezoning was given a negative recommendation by the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Council likewise did not approve the rezoning. There was an administrative appeal brought, and in the context of that, some further discussions were had with the counsel for the property owner in my office. When there was some movement, obviously I can't discuss, anything that's subject to attorney-client privilege. But the end result of that was that the ordinance to rezone the property was ultimately reintroduced to council with an amended development plan, which is what you see today, with 30 units maximum, as opposed to what had been initially, I think it was like 36 or something, but ultimately that got whittled down a little bit. So the ultimate judgment of council was that the plan at 30 units maximum was something that was a good zoning practice. So it then approved the rezoning pursuant to development plan, which is what you see in front of you. We also had a settlement agreement dealing with some of the other items that were important, And again, this is a lengthy process, and obviously the adjacent property owners, as well as city officials, believe that preservation of some of that tree line and these open spaces was crucial. And so we have language in the settlement agreement, you do not disturb it, period. In terms then of the overall functioning of this, obviously it's a community that's geared towards, perhaps an aging population. And so, how exactly it would function in terms of recreational amenities, as I mentioned at the beginning, that was something that frankly was just not amenable to putting into a settlement agreement. That's was left to the judgment of the Planning Commission to work with the developer and find some solutions to those concerns.
Okay,
So what is in front of you now is really is a continuation of the administrative process.
Okay.
So is the final site plan in agreement with all code requirements? Is it in substantial agreement with the preliminary? Is the recreational space suitable? Is the mailbox in a suitable location? All of those details, obviously, for the Planning Commission's expertise, and obviously we had a lot of departments that have to review it as well to get to this point.
Oh, okay. I guess a follow-up question then. Somewhere in there you said that the adjacent property owners had some input. So I guess what I'm trying to get at and make sure that, traditionally how this process goes is that the adjacent property owners can have some say-so. You can come up and talk about these things. That is not the case here, and I understand that, but if what you're describing is true, then that makes me feel a little better that they had some input at some point during this process, is what you just said.
Of course, there were multiple public hearings. Council conducted public hearings as well on the rezoning, and so what I meant to suggest is that when looking at what would be an appropriate resolution to this, a lot of those public comments, were things that I take notes on, and certainly city officials take notes on as well, and so taking into account some of their concerns relative to its ultimate density.
Okay.
I understand adjacent property owners always think less is better, but
Sure.
But at the end of the day, as the Commission's aware, the developments need to function as well, and so you have to have a certain amount of density in there so that ultimately these homeowners are going to be able to maintain the open spaces in a financial sense and some of the other amenities that they enjoy. So, so again, there was language in there relative to those open spaces. And I can quote a little bit. I don't want to monopolize it, but again, this is the type of thing that, if I'm illustrating, Mr. Crocker, where we took to heart some of the comments of the adjacent. So, developers shall not disturb any areas of the open space depicted on Exhibit 1 by clearing or grading, except solely as necessary to construct the infrastructure or other improvements permitted within that area. Special care must be made to protect the root system of any specimen trees within the open space where the trees at issue are not subject to permitted removal. Nothing prevents proper forestry management, removal of invasive species, or the removal of noxious weeds from the open space. So that additional language, which we typically don't see, to make sure that root systems are preserved and people aren't running the backhoes over them to kill these things. That is where we were sensitive to some of the comments of the adjacents, is preserving that tree line that they've enjoyed for so many years, and making sure that we had the mechanism available that if we saw something going on out there that was contrary to that goal, that we would be able to take legal action against that in a definitive way.
I'm sorry.
You can't.
I'm sorry. Mr. Crocker?
Yeah, so I guess you've answered all my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And ultimately, this is a recommendation to council, our vote right now. This is a recommendation that eventually council will vote on this.
Well, it would ultimately approve the plat, but again, some of these issues in terms of the recreational facilities and stuff like that, the Planning Commission's judgment is significant in this process.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Varga?
I have a question for the city. This property is still zoned RVG, right?
It is now zoned RVG, correct?
And the requirements of RVG still apply, correct?
Settlement agreement.
What's that? Well, it's the zoning code if it's zoned.
It's already been rezoned pursuant to development plan, so if the question is whether or not the development plan complies with the RVG district regulations, the legislative answer to that is yes, council has already spoken on it. The only thing, the decision points for the planning commission or its administrative function is to make sure that the plat requirements are all suitable pursuant to the code, to make sure that the final is in substantial agreement with the preliminary, as well as to sort of flesh out, as we've talked about all along, some of the landscaping issues, the recreational amenities, and obviously the Planning Commission brought up something new tonight relative to headlight mitigation on the cul-de-sac. And that's all obviously was contemplated as part of this process. So there's nothing new about that necessarily in between, for this as opposed to any other development project. But to the question of whether or not it should be RVG, it is RVG. To the question of whether or not this is the development plan, it is the development plan. Again, that legislation is final.
Thank you. Anything else from the commission members?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. Maybe Dave could address this as well. So I am in favor of the walking path, and I do appreciate that the notation on today's plan that was received was that there was, if it does move forward with the walking path, that it would be an asphalt surface, which I think we've been trying to get to at some point with the RVG amenities. It's just, when it is gravel, it just becomes a maintenance issue. So this is a good solution. But the development plan that's kind of in front of us with the density and so forth and the wetlands, it's really starting to lean toward, as you mentioned, the aged population. So I think that the walking paths tying in with the sidewalks could be a good thing. My question to you is there ability in these areas, say, for example, behind Lot 22, to add benches or something like that as you're just stopping to enjoy the day? I can see that being something that, with this buyer, that might be an issue.
I think we could put one or two benches back there, and extend the walking path over to a couple benches, or put the benches closer to the pond.
I think that would be a good addition to the walking path. And I open that up to the rest of the members as well. But I think that from a buying standpoint, that the buyer might be purchasing this development with the wetlands issue, that could be a good thing, just walking to enjoy the day. So that to me works.
Mr. Chair, I do have one question. In these exclusive use zones, are you able to put any fencing up? Is there, I guess, I don't know if it would be part of the declarations or not.
It would be part of the declarations. I don't know if that decision has been made, but I don't, typically because of the density here, we probably would not have fences.
I was just thinking maybe a dog run. You were asking for other suggestions. That would be one of mine as a recreational item. Again, I don't know where you'd put it. It's a little tight, but that would be one of my suggestions as opposed, or you could have it as part of the path and have a little area, because I assume a lot of people have dogs and want a place for them to.
We can take
run
that
around.
under consideration. We can work through with the administration to see if we can find a place to put one.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anything else? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, and I'm assuming 13 conditions. We have 11 designated. We mentioned, would 12 be the landscape or fencing at Kingfisher Court?
Yes.
To mitigate headlights, and that would be per city administration. And the 13th condition, would that be referencing your staff analysis for the exclusive use area?
language, yeah, language included on the plat to describe the exclusive use areas, period,
Which is in the italics portion here.
Yes.
but not as the example shows, as Mr. Zeman clarified.
Exclusive use areas are defined as areas owned in common by the association, but in which a unit owner has the right to an exclusive use,
Period.
period.
And then, Mr. Perkovich, if.
Yeah,
the-
14.
The temporary construction fencing, if we could
Okay.
add that as well.
Okay,
And then maybe a 15th one, some benches on the walking path.
Okay, 15 conditions. Yes, move to approve with the 11 conditions noted, addition of a 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th condition. 12th would be landscape or fence or both per city administration at Kingfisher Court to help mitigate headlights. The 13th condition would be the plat to define the exclusive use area per staff analysis. And 14th would be the temporary construction fencing delineating the wetlands areas. And 15 would be a bench or multiple benches at the walking path as
Ms. Mitchell?
The one condition about the construction fencing, not only the wetland areas, but along the western property line
okay.
to protect the buffer of the adjoining development.
But you're going to have that in your SWIP plan anyway, right? I mean, that's going to be a requirement.
Well, around the wetlands, but not along that western boundary, but we can surely show that on the plan so that it's clearly defined and part of the record.
So do we have all the conditions? We have a second?
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
No.
Mr. Crocker?
No.
Mr. Cook?
No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got so many pages here. Let me go for the colored one there. We have a miscellaneous review of a site alteration at 6095 Pinecone Drive. Is that applicant here? Please come up, give us your name and address, and tell us what you'd like to do on Pinecone.
Hello, my name is John Wright. My address is 168 Reserve Drive, Granville, Ohio. And what we're looking to do is we're proposing to install a new parking lot on the east side of the building to help out with our parking.
Hold on one second. Is that it in a nutshell before we get into it?
That's about it in a nutshell.
All right,
I'll be happy
Kathy,
to go
anything?
into it anymore if you need to.
Okay, Kathy, anything from administration?
We have 4 conditions noted as recommended.
Thanks. Anything from the commission members? Mr. Varga?
Mr. Chairman, it was brought to my attention that I had predicted this situation before the meeting, and that was that you couldn't maneuver around the
There's a transformer there.
transformer there, and I
Yes.
brought that up, and you said it would be, don't worry about it, it would be okay.
Well, we figured that we can work around it, and we still could possibly work around it. It's just not ideal.
Sure.
So it'd be more convenient to try to do a parking lot, and that's what we're
No, I
asking for
understand.
today.
It's just,
Yeah.
you know, It goes around.
And then also in the previous meeting, when we were getting our conditional use, we were planning on parking some of the vehicles inside of the building as well. And that's still available too, but it'd just be nice to try to give us a little extra parking, a little maneuverability around through there. So,
So you want to, right now, all your parking is on that one side. Let's see if it's the orientation here.
Yes.
The west side of
Yep,
the building.
yeah, the west side of the building.
And you're adding a pretty good, more than 100% more parking spaces.
That's correct, because we have, go ahead.
Did your business model change? Did the number of people driving, more employees? Is that the justification?
No, not really, but the equipment that we use is larger tow trucks that come in and out. So instead of trying to propose a smaller parking lot that we can make do with and look to try to expand it in a couple years, we're just looking to make it suffice now, to easy to move around. So if we already have to do a proposed parking lot, we just went ahead and just kind of made it as convenient as we possibly could to do it all at one time.
And but you're going to move the tow trucks to the new parking lot?
Yes, all the tow trucks will be parked there. So none of them will be parked on the west side. The west side will be just left open for the 2 office people that we have and any kind of customers that might come in the door, which we don't really have a lot of customers. Most of our work is contract work, but those parking will just be kind of open customer parking at that point and just keep all of our tow trucks on the one side.
And is there a door to access the building from the new parking lot?
There is a door on the back side of the building, right there. Yeah, so there is a sidewalk that is proposed right there, so the drivers the drivers would have access to kind of come in. Right inside that door, there's like a little desk with mailboxes and some of the drivers' needs and stuff like that. So they're able to stay out of the front office and don't have to enter in through that way. They just have access to the back part, so we don't have to worry about them trying to come to the office during non-business hours.
But all your work vehicles, or all the customer vehicles that you're working on?
We don't work on any customer vehicles.
Oh.
We just store our own tow trucks.
I see. Okay, so this is just like your
Yep, that's just going to be just our own personal trucks.
Because there's a door, I think, from the main street where the driveway goes straight into the building. Is there an overhead door there?
Yes, there is an overhead door.
But you don't use that as part of your process?
No.
Okay.
We might do a repair on one of our own trucks, but we do no customer
But that's
parking.
that's not a regular thing?
Yes.
Okay. I just needed to kind of understand,
Yes,
again,
absolutely.
how this was happening.
Yeah.
And the city doesn't have any problems with them parking their work vehicles, because they're on a corner, it would still be, it's not on the front side here, but it's on the front side here. We don't have a problem with them parking their vehicles in front of the building?
No, I think the thought would be that, if they're fleet vehicles, they're gonna be used throughout the day, so they're not gonna be there other than to park them at night.
Yeah, it was just, I just wondered if there was any sensitivity about that. Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Anything else? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the 4 conditions.
Second.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Perkovich?
Yes.
Ms. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann?
Yes.
Mr. Varga?
Yes.
Mr. Crocker?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
I understand we have another guest under the director's report. Please come up, give us your name and address. And we'll talk about Ganley.
Good evening. My name is Denver Brooker, principal with Vocon, the architect for the project, 3142 Prospect Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio. Last time we had a similar meeting, and you gave me a lot of feedback. It was very helpful. I appreciate your time again here this evening. So we have worked with the dealer, Ken Ganley, his team, along with Stolantis, the owner of these car brands. So we're coming back tonight. If we can go to the next slide. Next slide. We've made a number of revisions. We have added some site walls, some decorative brick and wrought iron, probably be aluminum, walls at the 3 entrances off of Mentor Avenue. So you can see that in these images. Very similar to other walls on the street at other retail areas. We have got approval from Stolantis to use one color of brick. So wherever there's brick, it'll be one brick, and it's going to be a slightly darker color than the light, so kind of in between the light and the dark we previously showed you. And you can kind of flip through these images here. You'll see that we were able to get Stolantis to approve all brick for the Chrysler Dodge Ram side of this, with the exception of the kind of iconic metal panel clad arched element. So now the south, east, and west ends of the building are all one color of brick, and you have the silver metal panel at the Chrysler Dodge Ram and the dark gray, almost black metal panel at Jeep. So I mean, as an architect, I'm happy with the result, and happy that Stolantis approves this. I think it's good, and we're looking for your feedback this evening, and hopefully you like it, and our next step will be to finish up and create a final site plan submission.
Thanks. Kathy, any?
As the commission is aware, we provided them with some pictures, photos of existing buildings in the village core, and personally, we're just very pleased with the addition of the site walls at the front of the site, and the use of the brick with the on the Chrysler side, which seems to very much complement the Jeep side, and then bringing in that metallic metal panel there above the Jeep entranceway. I just think it looks really nice. So we're pleased with with the changes.
Larry, could you pull up those entrances again with the
walls?
Yeah. I thought I saw one where you were depicting all of them, like it was in red.
It's a site plan,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I think that starts to give the essence of the old manor, I guess is what we've been saying.
Right.
So I like that. That was kind of where I was at. And I like what you've done with the building. So, is there anything else?
This is a question for Kathy. They do have lines of vehicles out there. I realize they're selling them. It's not a parking lot. Is there any requirement that in those landscape islands where they have the turning radiuses that they include some landscaping? Yeah, they're.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
It didn't really show up in the plans. I didn't see any internal landscaping or trees.
Well, when he submits his landscape plan with the final site
Mhm.
plan review, we'll certainly be looking for that.
Sure, so that would soften it just a little bit to have some.
And that is our intention, there would be
Okay.
landscaping there, and
Mhm.
even with the kind of fence entry elements, our intention is that there'll be landscape associated with the fence that will then extend between the fence elements, so you'll have this continuity of green space leading up to the hardscape entrances.
I had asked specifically for some of the things that you've done. I think you did it. I appreciate it. I know what you had to go through. It wasn't pleasant, I'm sure. But I think this, brings it closer to what we need. If you can think of any other things, like the walls and the landscaping, to kind of push it right 100%, maybe a few other things, I'm sure we would appreciate that too. But I don't know that there's anything I can ask for, in my opinion, more than what you've probably already done.
Very much appreciate that.
Is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman, one comment. While I do like the direction that we're starting to head, and I really appreciate the feedback. Where I still have issue is as we work from west to east, we end up with the portion of the building which is still very visible from Manor Ave, but it's essentially the entrance to the service bays. And from the west side of the building that you've added the brick to and sort of got the color scheme cohesive, that all works really well together. But this one elevation right here is just I guess, lacking, if you will, and it's, unfortunately, it's still very visible from that Menor Avenue corridor. So if there's anything you could do there to really highlight that or give it some more prominence, that, not the doors, for example, but architecturally, you've got some nice things going on to the west, and that just starts to become that utilitarian portion that unfortunately we still see. So I'm not sure what you could do there, but again, I think it just needs addressed a little bit more to make that feel a little bit more special.
I think what we can do actually in response to, as I'm looking at it quickly, those two relatively small window openings are actually existing openings in an original piece of wall. If we raise those lintels and create the windows as tall as the ones to the left and to the right, it'll give a rhythm to it that'll make it seem a little richer. So we'll look at the windows, and I think it'll make an impact. It'll make those windows seem more intentional.
Right. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You know, responding to that comment, I'm looking at the east-facing wall. Maybe I don't know how wide that driveway is there, but maybe some foundation landscaping there might help to like right there, right where the hand is. Maybe something vertical, something green, something could, you know, or just along those sections of walls, like foundation planting, is similar to what you might be doing in front. I don't know if that's I don't know if the width of that driveway would allow that. It looks pretty wide. It looks like it's all pavement over there. Maybe you could soften that edge too a little bit with some landscaping.
All right, we'll definitely look at that.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Kathy, anything else?
Nothing.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.